Hello and welcome to Excel Fostering. My name is Lucy Webber. I'm the Fostering Advisor Team Leader, and I work with the team that manage your inquiries when you first make contact with us. Today I am absolutely delighted and privileged to be speaking to Jacci Kirkland, who is our Director and QA and Service Improvement at Excel Fostering. So hello Jacci.
Hi Lucy, it's quite a wordy title, so I do apologise.
I got it out in the end. So can you just tell us a bit more about what you do here at Excel, please, Jacci?
Yeah, my job is to really support the region with everything that they need, really. So things like databases and how they record, HR, so things to do with staff. I give them support with policy, data protection. I'm around to support with really complex cases, and I chair our complex case panel. And any additional advice on issues regarding safeguarding that they might need.
Brilliant. Okay, so obviously that's what you do now. You're a social worker at heart, aren't you, Jacci? Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, I am. 22 years as a social worker and 21 years in fostering. But actually, I've always worked with children and young people. So when I left school, I went to college and I was nursery nurse. I actually was a nanny for some time, and then for 8 years I worked with disabled children in special education, which I absolutely loved, and that started to really sort of ignite my passion for working with children further. And then from there on in, I went to work in youth work, and that secured my future really, as going to university to become a social worker. And my second placement in uni was working in fostering, and I absolutely loved it. I loved that we were able to help children and young people who couldn't live at home, and foster carers was just so my superheroes. So that's how I got into fostering as well as a social worker.
Brilliant. Masses of experience then, Jacci. Okay, so what we want to talk to you today is a condition that could be affecting anyone with any kind of care and responsibility. So how would you describe compassion fatigue, Jacci?
Yeah, well, compassion fatigue, I think we've seen it much more in the pandemic affecting caring professions, but it has a number of names. It can be called the negative cost of caring, sometimes referred to as secondary stress reaction, but actually it's the term that describes the physical, emotional and psychological impact of helping others. And that's often through experiencing that through helping people through stress and traumatic events. And it is largely linked to the caring roles, because that regularly places you in stressful situations.
Yeah, I think anyone who has empathy can take on board and experience feelings and take that, and it can affect you yourself, can't it?
Absolutely. And, I think compassion fatigue in a caring profession, the pandemic probably, I think, really brought compassion fatigue to the forefront, I think, especially for nurses who were working in such extreme conditions. And actually, in terms of our foster carers, in terms of the foster carers' experience of compassion fatigue, it's occurred in fostering. And supporting children and young people who've been emotionally and psychologically affected by their experiences sometimes means that their behaviours they show are very challenging towards their foster carers, and they struggle to manage how they feel. And that can feel very personal to foster carers who over time can be really worn down. And without the appropriate space or support and supervision, it becomes so overwhelming for the carer that they start to develop compassion fatigue. And for example, I know that we dealt with this quite a lot in the pandemic, where families were locked down together, so caring families were locked down together, and it meant that normal support networks weren't available to our foster carers. So it meant there were no breaks. There were no natural breaks, so children going to school, for example, or going out with friends, or that coffee that you may go out for with your friends, or you might go to the gym. It just wasn't available to our foster carers. And also the children who were in care were actually really worried about their own families, you know, and their safety. And actually for such a sustained period, it became very tricky, because then our children were trying to manage their behaviour, their own emotions, which resulted in more challenging behaviour, and carers didn't have anywhere to place that in the breaks that they have. So, you know, we saw that compassion fatigue was an issue then, but actually, interestingly, we equally saw it after the initial stage of the crisis had passed, where carers had struggled through, if you like, the crisis, and we came to the other side of the pandemic. Actually, we saw compassion fatigue, you know, really come to the fore again for some of our carers. It became an issue where they just sort of, as I think the endorphins that kept them going through time sort of started to relax, we actually saw the impact of that.
So what are the symptoms of compassion fatigue? What will we look out for?
Well, in terms of compassion fatigue, it's things like feeling exhausted physically and psychologically. It's that feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness. There's a real reduced feeling of tolerance, empathy, sensitivity, and then, you know, feeling overwhelmed and exhausted by the demands placed upon you. People sometimes also report feeling detached, numb. They take decreased pleasure in activities. There's a loss of interest in all those things that you used to enjoy. Suddenly that becomes hard work, and you cease to sort of find them enjoyable or even want to do them. And then other things that can be a symptom are increased anxiety, anger, irritability, difficulty sleeping and making decisions. And then there's the physical symptoms like headaches, nausea, upset stomach and dizziness. So there's lots of different things that people experience. And what I would say, Lucy, is it's not just one symptom or one set of symptoms. It can be a combination of either or of those symptoms. So, you know, stress and trauma affects people in lots of different ways, and so the symptoms that people experience will be different too.
So what can we do if we think we're suffering with compassion fatigue?
Well, I think once you think that compassion fatigue is something that you might be struggling with, I think the thing to do is to always seek support. So it might be that if it's so significant, it's a GP. It might be a friend. If you're in one of the caring professions, you know, it will be that you might have access to a manager, or actually colleagues that you work with can be really helpful as well. And I think the bit about this is people often are really scared to talk about how they feel, because they feel that that's a weakness, especially in the caring professions. And I think you've got to be really honest and brave enough to talk about how you're feeling. That's actually a strength, and it's something that in any profession, when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or you think you're experiencing compassion fatigue, you need to be talking about it, because actually that really helps. Something that when I went through a very stressful period, I found was mindfulness. And there are lots of great apps now that help you with mindfulness. And it's just a way of compartmentalizing your thoughts and your feelings, just as a way of reducing your stress and anxiety. You know, it helps if you're starting to feel overwhelmed or you're starting to struggle with anxiety. It's just that focusing on your breathing. And one of the best apps I've ever found to help with that is Headspace. Available for free on any of the app stores, and it just really helps. That's one of my favorites in helping me take a few minutes out per day to do that. And interestingly, at sort of 48, I did find yoga It's not something that I'd ever been keen on previously. But I found yoga really helps me. I wouldn't say I'm proficient at it, but I do a bit of yoga every day to help. And I would say that, it just helps you to focus on yourself. It helps you to stretch your body. And I carry lots of stress within my body. And yoga's just really helped me to get to the other side of that and release some of that tension. Feeling overwhelmed is a really key symptom, and what I would suggest is planning your day in bite-sized chunks, building in breaks, being proactive about the support that you can gain, because that often helps you bring back a sense of control, and I think that's really helpful. Make sure you've got good self-care, and that includes eating healthily, getting more exercise, getting enough sleep. And then set aside times to do the things that bring you joy. It can be an effort when you're struggling with compassion fatigue. Really make that effort so that the things that you enjoy help you feel connected to your happiness, and find ways to connect with loved ones.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I would also say as well is look for and celebrate the small wins every day. So I started to keep a diary, which I found really useful. And on the worst days, I can still find something that I class as a win to be grateful for and went well, even if it's really tiny. And if you're a foster carer, talk to your social worker, or talk to fellow foster carers, because we're here, we're part of the team, and we're here to help you.
Yeah, we have support groups at Excel, don't we? So that gives you an opportunity to talk to other foster carers as well.
Absolutely, and we have mentoring for our new carers as well. So it's always good to check in and get the support you need.
I think as well, it's not leaving it too long. Once you come to that realisation, or before you even have compassion fatigue, if you're caring for someone and you're empathic, it takes it out of you emotionally. So actually put that side of self aside for yourself. Self-care is the key.
Absolutely it is. And there are other things that we can do to avoid compassion fatigue. And the best tips and hints I can share with you really are, keeping a check-in with yourself, being aware of how you're feeling. That's so important, so that you're aware if anything's starting to build up, if you spot any warning signs, and having a plan about how you might tackle that, or where you might get that support in those early stages. Take care of yourself, make sure you eat well, you're doing the things that you love, you're building the time in for yourself every day. I absolutely love a bath with candles, and I found that's been really helpful for me. A long day, have a bath with some candles, and I find for me that's sort of signaling to my body that that's the end of the day, to release that stress and let go and take real pleasure in that. I did go through a stage of finding that I wasn't getting enough sleep because I was worrying about things, and actually I found that makes things worse. Sleep deprivation is really difficult and can really affect your coping mechanisms. So make sure you get enough sleep. Make sure you're setting up your bedtime routine, and that might be a bath, making sure that you're not using your mobile phone at night just before you go to bed. Also not thinking about using the TV, maybe reading a book. Just spending some time, again, use your Headspace app. That could be really useful.
What I've done, in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, you wake up and you've got 1,000,001 things running around your mind, which actually the next day don't always seem so bad. So pen and paper or on your phone, just put in your notes, get it out of your head, put it down out of your head, and refer to it the next day. And I'm sure you'll think, well, what was I worrying about that for? But it's there then, it's out of your head.
Absolutely. And I do the same, Sarah. I've got a little notebook and pencil by my bed. And if I wake up, and there are times that I do wake up, if something big's happening, that's a normal reaction to how we're feeling sometimes. I make a note of it, and then I know that I've let it go for the night and I can pick it up in the morning, and that is really helpful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing that I've found really useful as well is I've recently moved back to Staffordshire, where some of my oldest friends live, and that reconnecting with my social network has been brilliant. You know, that support from friends and family. That means actually they often spot some of the warning signs, you know, before you do. And actually, I think that can really be helpful, because actually by doing that, they're helping you to spot them early and do something about it.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get defensive, you know, when your partner says to you, gives you some feedback, but listen to them, especially if you are in that caring.
Yeah, and I think there is a perception that actually, as I said to you before, that showing how you feel can be a sign of weakness, or people think you're not coping. But actually being able to let some of those feelings and thoughts out, sometimes is all you need. Sometimes just being able to talk it through. You don't actually always need somebody to actually give you the answers. Sometimes just being able to share that, and think it through in that logical space with somebody listening to you is super helpful.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jackie. It's been so interesting and lovely for you to talk to us today. We have our live Zoom drop-in session this afternoon, so the link will be in the comments below, and one of our fostering advisors are there to answer any questions that you have. Face-to-face, it's easy, you just join it and there'll be someone there waiting for you. Otherwise, if you'd like to make an inquiry to foster, you can go onto our website, submit an online inquiry. We have an online chat, and also pick up the phone if you'd like to. Our number here is 0800 012 4004, and we would love to hear from you. If you've got any questions for Jackie, please ask and we can make sure that they get to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you, Lucy.
Thanks, Jackie.
Take care. Bye.